Hi, my name is Don Bagwell from the IBM Advanced Technical Skills Organization. Today I'm going to walk you through an illustration of how IBM's Compute Grid modern batch product integrates with enterprise scheduler products such as Tivoli Workload Scheduler. The first two charts are mostly words, but the rest of the video consists of animation and screen captures to tell the story. On this chart, we're going to give you a preview of the technical message that will be delivered throughout this presentation. We'll just let the bullets scroll onto the screen and give you a moment to read each one in turn. Before we begin, we'd ask that you make note of a few things. Again, we'll scroll the bullets onto the screen and give you a moment to read each one. On this chart, we'll set the stage for how the integration with enterprise workload schedulers takes place. The key is the interface to the Compute Grid scheduler function. The first interface you're likely to use is the web interface, but it has several more. Watch as we unfold the list of interfaces and highlight one in particular, the message-driven bean interface. On this chart, we'll introduce the WS Grid utility program. That's what the enterprise scheduler invokes to interact with Compute Grid. Two versions exist. One, a native implementation on ZOS, and another, a Java client for use on any platform. On ZOS, the native client uses MQ and bindings mode to communicate with Compute Grid. On this chart, we're going to use PowerPoint animation to illustrate at a high level how all this comes together. Pay particular attention to the fact that the WS Grid job stays active for the duration of the Java batch job in Compute Grid. That's because the WS Grid job is feeding the Java output back to JSpool, and the WS Grid job stays active so it can tell Tivoli the final return code of the submitted batch job in Compute Grid. Sit back and watch this unfold. The JCL that invokes the WS-Bind native client on z/OS looks like what's shown here. PowerPoint animation will be used again to walk through the elements of the JCL and highlight key pieces. What about the output from the Compute Grid batch job? As you'll see, it goes back the JES spool just as any other batch program would. As we saw, the Compute Grid product has a browser-based interface as well as the MDB interface. Jobs submitted through the MDB interface are viewable and manageable through the browser job management console, and actions taken in the management console are signaled back to JES through the WS Grid utility. Here we address the issue of how this would work if MQ was not part of your messaging infrastructure. The basic mechanism is the same, but two things change. The JMS provider becomes the internal messaging provider of WebSphere Application Server, and the WS Grid client becomes the Java-based version we mentioned earlier. Watch now as the story is told in words and pictures.